What it has proven is that a drug can block this virus.
Very early results from trials of remdesivir suggest this HIV drug actually might treat COVID-19.
The data shows that remdesivir has a clear-cut, significant positive effect in diminishing the time to recovery. This is really quite important.
This is not a cure. In studies touted by Dr. Fauci today, it lowered mortality and shortened the duration of the illness.
This has not been a proven therapeutic. Physicians would probably be reluctant to, if they had other choices, to use something that protected in such a marginally valuable way. But we don't have other choices.
For an antiviral to work in a positive way in these very sick patients, to me, is indeed very good news.
Many states in this country now planning to reopen, and soon, despite dire warnings from Dr. Fauci for the fall.
It is more likely than not that we will see this again and again until we really stick the nail in the coffin of this outbreak by a vaccine.
Pfizer now says it will begin testing one in the US shortly and claims it could supply millions by the end of the year. Oxford University in the UK started human trials last week of its own possible vaccine. Still, parks reopened in Miami this morning. Florida's governor, who was late to close, just unveiled his plan for reopening the state.
We don't want to see any more infections, but we're going to work on it.
Right now, it does not appear that any state meets the vague advisory White House guidelines that call for a downward trajectory of documented cases within a 14-day period before any reopening. Haircuts are already allowed in Colorado and Georgia. In California, we're told that's still months away, by a governor now feeling pressure from those earlier openers.
There's no question it puts pressure. I'd be lying to suggest otherwise. I'm worried we can erase all the gains in a very short period of time.
Meanwhile, a new Marist poll shows 65% of Americans think it's also a bad idea for people to return to work without further testing. And 91% think we shouldn't be holding large sporting events yet.
I hope that there's some form of baseball. I mean, it's for the country's mental health.
Around 2,500 just attended the funeral of a popular rabbi in Brooklyn. 12 summonses were issued for violating social distancing and refusing to disperse. The city's mayor called out the entire Jewish community on Twitter and was criticized.
I regret if the way I said it in any way gave people a feeling of being treated the wrong way. That was not my intention. It was said with love, but it was tough love. It was anger and frustration.
That model, often cited by the White House, says 74,000 will have died by August 4th. Could be sooner. We're already nearing 60,000. And as you mentioned, Jake, we have in fact just passed that stunning and sad milestone, 60,000 Americans dead. I just want to say one more thing about remdesivir, this drug that's being much touted today. It is worth noting that right now, it is not approved anywhere in the world to treat anything. So an extraordinary use authorization from the FDA would be extraordinary, but these are extraordinary times, and the FDA tells us that they are in ongoing discussions with the maker of that drug to get it to patients, quote, as quickly as possible. Jake.
All right, Nick Watt, thank you so much. Joining me now is CNN Chief Medical Correspondent Dr. Sanjay Gupta. Sanjay, Dr. Fauci seemed very optimistic about remdesivir. What's your read on it?
Yeah, I mean, he did. I think my read is, we've been waiting for a trial that actually is a randomized trial that's of a larger group of patients. Most of the reporting that has been out there so far, most of these trials have been pretty small, retrospective, meaning looking backwards, not randomized. So this was a well-conducted trial, about 1,000 patients in 68 different centers around the world, Jake. Let me show you the results, though, just so you know, when we talk about the significance and what this really does, it's important to look at what their outcomes they were looking at. They were trying to figure out, obviously, survival overall, the mortality rate, that's on the left, and then duration of illness. Now, with regard to mortality rates, you see that there's a difference between the people who were treated with remdesivir versus placebo. When you do the calculation, though, that's not a significant enough finding. It's hard to say that that drop was actually due to the medication given the sample size. But it's the thing on the right, you know, the duration of illness, that is significant, a 31% faster recovery in those patients who got remdesivir. Now that, you know, that could be significant. You know, it shows a couple things. One, it's proof of concept that this seems to have an impact on this virus, Jake. This has been a difficult virus, as we know, to treat. So this is the first one to show that impact. Also, you know, there's this question, and I think it's going to be something we want to really find out. Does it also decrease the amount of virus in your nose and your mouth? Because if it also does that, as you know, Jake, even once you're feeling better, that might decrease the spread of this as well, which would be a big deal. We don't know that yet, but I think, you know, there's certainly enthusiasm. This isn't a home run by any means, but it's the only thing, as Larry Brilliant said, that we really have at this point.
Right, but it is a glimmer of potentially very good news. The former FDA commissioner under President Trump, Scott Gottlieb, said the drug has, quote, enough data to support consideration of access under an emergency use authorization by the FDA. The New York Times is reporting that that could happen as soon as today. What happens after that, assuming that the emergency authorization from the FDA goes forward?
Well, you know, as Nick Watt was just saying, they got to talk to Gilead and make sure that they can start to produce enough of this medication. You know, this is a medication, again, many people may know, it's been around for a while, right? It was trialed in Ebola as well, so that it is an existing drug. I think it's going to be a question with Gilead now, can they start to actually meet the demand that is certainly going to come? I should point out, and you know this, Jake, but the EUA, the Emergency Use Authorization, has been, there's been a lower bar for that recently, given that we're in the middle of a pandemic. So I'm not surprised at all that it will be sort of approved under this EUA sort of thing. I think it's a question of being sure that people who need it can get it. I talked to Scott Gottlieb just about an hour ago as well about this. I think one of the question marks is who should get this now? And he was thinking that people who early on have the illness and are at high risk because of some sort of pre-existing condition, they probably will be the ones who may be the most likely to benefit from this, at least early on.
Do you think this is a breakthrough? I mean, Fauci compared it to the feeling he had when AZT was discovered during the HIV AIDS crisis 30 years ago.
Yeah, I heard that, and I was a little surprised by that. You know, you could see the data in terms of what it does. There's, at least in this early data, really no impact on mortality, on saving lives. It does seem to shorten the duration of illness, and that can be significant. You know, if you look at things like Tamiflu even, shortening the duration and the severity of illness is important. It's not clear that it actually will decrease mortality at this point. So we'll have to wait and see. It's also, again, an existing drug. This is a drug that already existed, is being repurposed for this indication now to treat coronavirus. So, you know, Dr. Fauci obviously has 40 years been doing this, so he has a lot of context for these sorts of things. But I think, you know, people should look at the numbers, look at the data. You know, we'll continue to, we'll put that up on the website so people can look at this themselves.
And Sanjay, projections of what a death toll will be, the projections are not facts. Projections are just predictions. And the projection of the death toll of 60,000, just a few weeks ago, we were told we weren't going to get there until August. We just reached it. It's April. Why? What's going on?
Yeah, Jake, I think you and I had a conversation about this a couple of weeks ago, and you said, is it likely that we're going to get this to this number before August 4th? And it was pretty clear by all the trends that we were seeing. And as you know, that same model that predicted 60,000 now has the projected death toll around 74,000 people. You know, Jake, these models are frankly, they're all over the place. If you look at the numbers that we put up, they're actually part of a wide range. They give a wide range of numbers, anywhere from 30 to 140,000 in some of these ranges here. And I think it's difficult. There's two things I think that happened over the last couple of weeks. One is that we started to include probable infections, probable hospitalizations, and probable deaths with regard to this COVID infection. Obviously, the plateau that we're seeing is more of a plateau that's at a high plateau versus a curve. You know, this is not looking like a curve as much as it went up, is staying up now for a while. We're going to see what happens next. Hopefully it'll start to come down. And finally, Jake, you know, I mean, these stay-at-home orders that are getting lifted, I don't know that that's already had an impact because that'll take a couple, 3 weeks, but it's certainly affected the models. I think that's part of the reason the projected deaths now by August are going to go up. And look, even 74,000, which is now the August 4th model, what that's showing, that may be low based on what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, that seems like a conservative estimate to me, at least based on today's facts.